Thank you for accepting this presentation on extensive and intensive iconography. I will talk about Goethe's Faust. How is a national author established? How does a major text enter the national canon, become the very representative of that canon itself? In this presentation, I look at how images contribute to the process through the productive metaphor of flingende Blätter, loose leaves, involving images in outline. Flingende Blätter is the very title of a popular humoristic magazine published from 1845 to 1944 in Munich and profusely illustrated. The material is not satirical, although fancy and spirit pervaded Retzsch's work on Goethe's Faust. His 26 outlines quickly spread from Germany, where they were originally published in 1816. As early as 1817, they reached London as a gift from an important publisher to a socialite and key mediator of German culture in England. From 1819, the originals were imported by a resourceful German bookseller in London and sold with a short English summary and separate captions. They were copied by an English engraver, Henry Moses, sometimes with significant changes, as here, where God disappears. Moses's copy itself went through a remarkable number of reprints, copies, and adaptations in the 1820s and 1830s. Circulation of these images triggered translations of Faust into English. Further versions adorned various English items and ended up as a regular fixture of Faust illustrated editions. Conversely, in France, where two Faust translations had already been published by 1824, Retzsch's series had a longer and more varied fortune. Lithographed by Jean-Baptiste Moriz in 1824, later re-engraved by Trube, Branche, and others, they survived in multiple forms until the 1930s as a wide-ranging series of albums and books for diverse audiences. Countries were keen on having their own Retzsch or books adorned with Retzsch plates. Moriz Retzsch's 26 plates were originally engravings by the artist himself. In a single frame without captions, numbered above right from 1 to 26, they were simply held together by string. They sat, escorted by a booklet of Faust quotations, in a cleverly designed portfolio, and each could be perused alternately, in comparison, or separately. Circulation marked this genuine and fanciful work in numerous ways. First, the serial engravings were issued in Germany as multiple exemplars and then reissued from 1820 onwards. Second, through multiplication processes such as lithography, engraved copies, wood engraved replicas, and later mechanical reproductions, they became loose leaves or insert plates in successful publications. These triggered other copies and reproductions, setting new patterns in Faust iconography. They also significantly inspired major artists in their work, as we shall see. In so doing, they established Goethe's reputation, easing the way for Faust to be known and appreciated. Percy Bysshe Shelley's comment, while attempting to translate a Faust passage into English, is revealing. I never perfectly understood the Harz Mountain scene, until I saw the etching, writes Shelley. Whether it is that the artist has surpassed Faust, or that the pencil surpasses language in some subjects, I know not, or that I am more affected by a visible image, but the etching certainly excited me far more than the poem it illustrated. Third, French reviews of the time encouraged artists to use Moriz copies as models to train their hand in outline. Fourth, their modest price and availability made them ready cut and paste material, as in the early example of Thomas Frognall Dibdin's bibliographical, antiquarian, and picturesque tour in France and Germany. Retzsch's plates amused Dibdin better in fighting ennui in dull Stuttgart, where he had visited the publisher's bookshop, and he cut and pasted the characters into a fictive letter reproduced in his book with woodcuts, a precursor of the scrapbook and 20th century collage. Retzsch had turned the tragedy into a silent picture story, shaping characters, places, and plot by using the outline aesthetic inspired by Flaxman. His frames, in horizontal format and slow succession, had strengthened the narrative. This implied a few essential distortions of the play's meaning I will not expand on for time and clarity's sake. Say, they were not only outlines in Schlegel's Athenaeum sense, that is, poetic hieroglyphs, inciting the imagination to complete the picture, just as the poet's words were magic formulae for life and beauty, wrote Schlegel. They were also seen as unpretentious engravings in contour. For an untried eye, they simply outlined the play, they sketched and condensed Faust, offering a summary or synopsis that could be variously reinterpreted. Importantly, these pictures worked very differently from massive commentary as they met with text, whether captions, summaries, excerpts, or Faust in partial and full translation. As intersemiotic tools, they made different demands on readers' competencies: textual linearity on one hand, over-detailed and intricate silent representations on the other, either in succession or echoing a motive here and there within the series. Easily copied and cheap to reproduce, they gave birth to a number of printed items which, although might look the same, read very differently depending on how loose leaves were inserted in text. As decorative designs on covers, they were clever marketing tools, molding books and albums as intriguing magical objects, as you see here, or as desirable acquisitions, as when this scene of Faust amorously contemplating Gretchen's bed finds itself reproduced in gilt on an album's cover. In short, they shaped an important part of Goethe's Faust reception and made a long-standing mark on Faust iconography. Now to the main question. How then are these flingede blätter to be evaluated? What tools are to be used to assess their importance and malleability? I suggest using extensive versus intensive iconography. I coined the term in 2005 by reference to Ségolène Lemaine's extensive and intensive culture in her article on Jean-François Millet as diffused through engraving. Like Ségolène herself, we expand Roger Chartien's notion of extensive and intensive reading borrowed from German and American reading theories. Extensive iconography underlines the role of images in building a collective imagination, active in the migration of motifs from artist to artist. Images and motifs pass from one edition to another, as when Édouard Frère or Gaston Jourdain copy, highlight, and rework key scenes by Retzsch. Hence, an intensive iconography, however, persists within the extensive trend, allowing for genuine reinterpretation within characteristic books, such as when Delacroix brilliantly expands Faust meeting Gretchen on the basis of a Retzsch plate. Let us look briefly at these. Under financial pressure, young Édouard Frère served as main artist for Joseph Bry's popular literary illustrated evenings, les veillées littéraires illustrées, meant for the popular classes. Joseph Bry had developed le roman à 4 sous, a sort of penny dreadful or dime novel of the time, printing 16 quarto pages on thin paper in 2 columns with wood engravings at 20 centimes, that is 4 sous, per part. Yet his selection included many classical authors and modern celebrities whom he contributed to popularize. Goethe opened the series with Werther. Faust joined the ranks in a revised version of Nerval's translation. Significant additions make seminal to Nerval's studies this his last contribution to translating and interpreting Faust in French, perhaps unexpected in such a lowly publication. The inexpensive brochure confirms the major importance of such editions, regularly overlooked. Images gave it extra weight. 10 in-text illustrations, hyped as drawings by Édouard Frère, adorn the 44-page quarto, shamelessly copied from Retzsch via Moriz or some other go-between. In black and white contrast, they focus on the main scene with astute gradual shadowing. They enhance effect by preceding, paralleling, or finishing off the most touching or gripping parts. Édouard Frère, not yet a popular genre painter specializing in domestic scenes, treated Retzsch in ways appealing to the masses in woodcuts by François Rouget. 4 revamped Retzsch copies titillated the reader in pages 12 and 13, as you see here, well before the matching text. 2 further engravings, set in matching passages, opposed a malignant Mephistopheles muttering to Martha to a tender Faust leaning over a petal-picking Margaret, his arm over her shoulders. A fourfold climax, with the text ending, hammered home Margaret's suffering at the spinning wheel, then at Mass, and Faust's torments, killing Valentine, aghast at Margaret's spectre. On the front page, full center, Faust pledges to a white phantomatic Mephistopheles, also reproduced on the cover. Above it, an ornate literary illustrated evening's header with 2 suave ladies nonchalantly reading promised a brighter future to the lowly consumer for the modicum of 50 centimes. Conversely, the book illustrated by Gaston Jourdain belongs to fin de siècle book collecting issued after Gaston's death. Jourdain's compositions are insert plates in a deluxe publication for private circulation, introduced by Franz Jourdain, his architect brother, Art Nouveau theoretician and writer. The dramatized introduction implicitly styles Gaston's early death and his toils on Nerval's tragic fate. The book includes again Nerval's translation. Both artists are bonded through a common creative idealism and passionate vision. The iconography opens with a quasi-erotic scene, a shapely naked female body in meditative Faust's dark study, an intensified idea borrowed from Gabriel Max's opening plate in his own 1880 portfolio with the corpse concealed in the foreground. The preface stresses how Gaston needed 10 years for these compositions commissioned by Paul Gallimard, although he knew Faust by heart. The plates indeed read as a compendium of Faustian iconography, where Retzsch is called upon, yet subjected to fantastic or burlesque treatment and gender reversal. When the poodle appears in plate 4, Gaston's ferocious monster has swelled to extraordinary proportions, his muzzle revealing terrifying fangs, but both the creature and the room's layout are based on Retzsch's plate 3. A male sorcerer is swapped for the witch in her kitchen, but the string of frogs hanging from the ceiling is clearly a graphic citation of Retzsch's corresponding plate on the left. A true compilation, this book shows to what extent 19th century iconography bears on pliable amalgams, at the heart of which Retzsch occupies pride of place. Goethes Faust by Delacroix is a major new creation in which the young painter and lithographer meets the German poet to produce an important romantic book, imposed by Charles Motte on Delacroix, who would have preferred a portfolio of lithographs. Delacroix knows Retzsch well from 1821, both directly, through free-hand sketched copies, as you see here, indirectly through the famous Faust performed by Daniel Terry in Drury Lane he had seen, in costumes and probably sets after Retzsch. Here, Retzsch as iconographic matrix inspires numerous scene compositions and details. The poodle's twisting tail as it lands near Faust in open country harks back to Retzsch's trailing strokes. The upper diagonal of the broken scene, as Mephistopheles and Faust ascend the mountain, corresponds to a similar treatment. However, in intensive iconography, what is remarkable is Delacroix's capacity to extract the dramatic potential from a scene by Retzsch. Example. Retzsch's first meeting with Margaret, Retzsch's first meeting of Faust with Margaret, is itself based on extensive iconography stemming from Necker's now lost painting Retzsch had certainly seen in Dresden, and which had been early diffused through lithography. As Faust approaches Margaret, Retzsch subtly stresses a parallel between Faust in the foreground and Mephistopheles in the background through identical costumes and swords. Delacroix projects them in the foreground, partly masking them under Faust's large cloak, which masks the sword here. The male bodies become a narrow trap into which an alluring yet disdainful and frightened Margaret falls. The two partners close in on her in a powerful grip, both real and fantastic, in which each is the other's double. Indeed, Faust turns into devil here. He is the real embodiment of Mephistopheles' spectral shape, while the contrapuntal movement of their legs and feet on the ground builds a metaphor of the road to destruction. Within extensive and intensive iconography, interaction and reinterpretation of iconographic motifs and circulation of images re-evaluated from country to country involve famous and less conspicuous artists in the comparative process. By contrast to illustration studies that privilege exceptional cases while they sideline mainstream or popular books, despite all these artifacts being complex cultural objects, the extensive, intensive concept allows us to address circulation of images in an interdisciplinary way. Of Géricault's The Raft of the Medusa reproductions, Tom Gretton has pointedly opposed the notion of authorship relating to intentional agency, individual or collaborative gestation, to the effect of pictures' postpartum life and their effect on the onlooker's imagination. What Walter Benjamin names aura is to be viewed in terms of authorship, specifically individual, that grants artworks a precise place in space, time, national history, and personal career. It also later serves the competition of nations for recognition in international culture. Aura hardly resists the mass culture phenomenon and the effectiveness of pictures in circulation, particularly when combined, modified, or altered. Customized copies of Retzsch's 26 plates reveal intentional agency. In most cases, this does not reflect on Retzsch himself, but on Goethes Faust. The aura pertains to the author of a singular text gradually canonized as paragon or heritage treasure. In this sense, Retzsch's outlines, much abused through copying, are a bait of outline, that is, a fishing line cast out by publishers to net clientele, small fry, the minnow, or the big fish. Tailored as mass production publications in Frere's case, they reveal intention and combined authorship, publishers, artists, and wood engravers' agency. The item gains further aura, this time for both Goethe and Nerval, his translator, publicizing with the German author's approval and endorsement his own translation. In Jourdain's recycling of details, we perceive an ironic, reference-packed fin de siècle compendium of culture, reflecting yet again on the play's aura, but also his brother's clever intention to parallel Gaston's and Nerval's common path for a choice audience. Extensive iconography prompts analysis of publishing context, readers' reactions, public sensitivity to images, and imaginative processes. It reveals that books and prints are largely cultural objects, relegating authorship to second position. In considering their circulation, we are led to see those dimensions and can hardly consider copied images in isolation. In intensive iconography, such as in Delacroix's case, intention is still manifest, but strongly engages with the re-imaginative process of different communities. Delacroix's creation only gained aura in the second half of the 20th century when the artist himself emerged as a major master. The book was a commercial failure at the time for both publisher and artist, dismissed as le chef de l'école du lait. Historical, artistic, and ideological context in this case is still to be taken into account if we wish to properly evaluate image circulation. Thank you for your attention.